Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Benchwarmers Sports Talk podcast. And we have an episode to bring to you today that we're always excited about. It's the second consecutive year we've been able to bring to you the NHL season preview episode. A few days later than usual, but it's here nonetheless, and we're very excited to bring it to you today. As always, it's Labi. I'm joined by Jacob. Jacob, how you doing today?
I'm much better. Reason why we couldn't get it out earlier was I was sick with food poisoning for a couple of days, so I'm good. I'm ready to go, and I'm just excited to talk hockey, bro. I can't. We wait a whole like 4 months for it to come back, and now it's back. So let's get into it.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, health is more important than everything. Glad to hear you're feeling better. And, it still gives us a lot of time to break down the season. If teams have really only played one or two games, I don't think that's really going to change our perception of where we thought teams might finish. And if anything, it gives us a chance to kind of talk about how maybe a team's gotten on in their opening game
Absolutely.
or opening two games. So I think we're going to follow a very similar outline than we did last year, which is we're kind of just going to go division by division, kind of talk about each team a little bit, where we think they might fit in the playoffs. And then at the end, we'll give you some way too early and probably way too wrong award predictions, maybe some early Stanley Cup contenders that we're thinking about. So which division do you want to start with tonight, Jacob?
Well, let's start with your Pittsburgh Penguins in the Metro.
All right, sounds good to me. So yeah, we will start with the Metro Division. Of course, we're back to the old divisions. Of course, no longer having to do the COVID bubble divisions that we saw last year. Everywhere is back to, I think, pretty much full capacity. Even in Canada, we're going to get the regular divisions, regular travel, regular schedule. So it's just a normal hockey season, which you absolutely love to see. It's been great to see, especially in Canada, being able to have fans in the stands. And so what that means is the Metropolitan Division. It's pretty stacked on first glance. Maybe not as tough as a couple of the other divisions. I'd say the Atlantic's probably the toughest division in the NHL, but I think the Metro's probably second.
Oh yeah, I think the Metro has a lot of playoff contenders in it. You look at the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are looking to contend again for however many years in a row it would be, and then you look at the teams like Carolina and both New York teams who are trying to make a splash. So there's definitely a huge argument that the Metro is the second, if not if it's one of the hardest divisions to play.
Yeah, and I think the reason why it gets that is because it's probably going to be one of the toughest divisions to predict in terms of how many top end talent there is. Like you said, I think you even go down the list to the bottom. The Rangers have taken some significant steps forward. The Flyers kind of have a good year, then a shit year, then a good year, then a shit year, and they had a shit year last year, so who knows what to expect from them. And honestly, the New Jersey Devils have taken some big strides. Obviously, adding Dougie Hamilton really helps. And then, I mean, once again, I'm not going to judge people based on their first game of the season, but did you see Jack Hughes OT winner? That's definitely Selly of the Year already. You can book that.
Honestly, I love it, and I think that teams and players they. I think it's also the fact that there's like a full capacity crowd. Like, and seeing that celebration, for those who don't know, he's a filthy overtime winner against, who was it, the Jets? No, it was
It was the Chicago
Blackhawks.
Blackhawks.
Disgusting forehand, backhand, open net, and then he threw his stick into the crowd, um, giving a fan his game winner. So I honestly think that this needs to happen a lot more, and I would love to see more celebrations like this because it kind of sums up how much the players have missed them right there.
Yeah, absolutely, and you saw just the intensity that that crowd got, and I think the reason why that kind of stuff is frowned upon is because when you throw a stick into the stands, there's going to be a huge fight over it, and I think that's where they have the issue with it,
But
from a
I
league
think for
perspective.
a situation like that, though, I think it's okay.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I mean, obviously, it came from a moment of pure joy, and that's what you love to see is that energy. And as you mentioned, the crowd does feed off of that. But yeah, let's get into some of these team breakdowns. And I think I want to start with the Columbus Blue Jackets, just because I think that this is the one team that you can kind of by default kind of kick out of the running. I think there's a case for the other 7 teams in this division to make the playoffs. I think the Columbus Blue Jackets are clearly on the outside looking in this division. It's a tough market, Columbus. We saw, again, what it takes. Guys don't want to re-sign. You look at the amount of talent that they've lost, Panarin, Bobrovsky, all of these guys over the years. They trade away Seth Jones because he doesn't want to sign, and in order to get Werenski to stay, they have to severely overpay him. It's a team going through a severe transition. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be a rough season for the Columbus Blue Jackets. I have them finishing last in this division.
Which I will agree with, but I do think Elvis Merzlikins will have one of the greatest seasons a goalie, like a comeback season, a goalie's had. Not because he had a bad season last year, but because of what happened in the offseason. I think he's playing with a heavy heart, and I think he's got a lot to prove.
Yeah, of course, they are dealing with the loss of one of their young goalie prospects this season, and so I could definitely see the Blue Jackets goaltending maybe picking it up. But I mean, I think in front of that is a team that's going to kind of be leaving their goalies out to dry.
I agree.
So we don't have to talk too much about Columbus. We kind of are both in agreement there. Maybe let's go to the top because honestly, I think it's a very fair question. Jacob, who do you have winning this division?
I have either the Islanders or the Penguins. I think once Crosby gets back, Crosby is still Sidney Crosby, point per player since he's been in the league. I don't think anyone's better. I still think, well, maybe he may not be the best player right now because his age and his injury. So you can obviously throw McDavid and McKinnon in that category, but he's still a ridiculous playmaker. He can still score 30 goals, no problem. I think that the Penguins have a great shot here. Goaltending needs to figure it out. Jari needs to be solid. And then you have the Islanders. You have two stellar goaltenders in Sorokin and Varlamov, who right now is dealing with an off-season injury. But once he gets back to form, he's going to be pretty good. And I think that the Islanders have a great chance, especially under. We all know how good Barry Trotz's system works, so I think he'll be a main factor as to why they do so well.
Yeah, absolutely. I have the Islanders first place in this
Wow.
division.
As a Pittsburgh fan, you
Um,
have the Islanders first.
yeah, I'll talk. I guess we'll talk about the Penguins next, but to talk about the Islanders first, as you mentioned, Barry Trotz, in my opinion, is the best coach in the league. The team plays a system. They were able to bring back all of those players from last year.
And
This is a
Parisi.
team that's, yes, and Parisi, as you mentioned, in terms of an addition. Pulak and Pellick are now both, I believe, signed to long-term deals.
Yep.
That's going to be a huge relief for both of those guys. I think that that's the most underrated defensive pairing in the league. That defensive pairing is just so solid.
Well, you saw what they did last year to all the team, like all the teams they played. They shut them down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reason why is like I don't think one of them as an individual is like a stud, like top 5 name recognition, which is why they don't get that credit. But the two of them as a duo are absolutely like probably the best defensive pairing in the league. You mentioned the goaltending kind of coming off of some injuries. I agree, but I agree with you on both cases that they might struggle to start. But once they get fully healthy, this is a team that knows how to win. This is a team that knows how to make the playoffs. I think this is possibly a year where we see them take control and win the division in first place. Let's move on to Pittsburgh. You were talking about how you thought that they could win this division. As a Penguins fan, I'm going to be honest with you. Once again, I don't want to use the games that have already been played because normally you do a preview before a puck has been dropped. But I've been so pleasantly surprised with the Penguins' first 3 games of the season. They went into Florida, played Tampa Bay and Florida, and were the better team in both of those games. They played the Tampa Bay Lightning off the ice on opening night. And I know it's only one game. It's only 3 games now. They're 2-0-1. But I've been very impressed with the depth that this team has. And honestly, I know I keep saying Barry Trotz is the best coach in the league. I think Mike Sullivan's a top 3 coach in the league, and I'll fight anyone who disagrees with me. What this guy's been able to do, he just became the winningest coach in Penguins franchise history last night with a win over the Chicago Blackhawks. What he's been able to do with just a consistently injured team, hand him an AHL lineup, and he finds a way to have the team play good hockey because of his system. And obviously it helps that you have Crosby and Malkin, and you can lean on those guys when things aren't going great. The reason I'm not picking them to win the division is because I do think that the injuries are going to eventually slow us down, and I am a bit shaky on our goaltending. Although Tristan Jarry has played well to start the season, which is a pleasant surprise, and I'm secretly hoping that he's going to have a good, solid, consistent year. I want to pick the Penguins in first. I have them in second place because of... I think the Islanders are a slightly more stable due to injuries and goalies.
Which is reasonable, and I wouldn't be surprised if either of those teams finish first and second. Like, if they finish first and second, I won't be surprised.
Yeah, it's so tight down. It's so tight in the Metro. Like, I think that, honestly, the difference between first in the division and missing the playoffs completely could be a couple of points. I think it's going to be really that close. I don't see any team running away with this.
I honestly think it'll come down to one game, and it'll be between the two of them.
Yeah, it definitely could. And that's why these early games, like, for the Penguins to be winning with Crosby and Malkin out of the lineup, it's huge. And that's why, I don't want these perceptions to kind of creep into my head, but I think at the beginning of the season, for me, I'd say, okay, Pittsburgh, if we can just make the playoffs, because we're probably going to start slow. Now that we're starting 2-0-1, I see what the depth is bringing up. I'm feeling more confident because it's not like we're going to get worse when Crosby and Malkin come back. Sure, maybe the results will regress back to the mean a little bit. We might lose some games here and there. But, Crosby and Malkin, when you add Crosby and Malkin to a team, it obviously only gets better. So, yeah, I really do agree with you. I think that fight might be a little bit closer than you think. So with us kind of having the Islanders and the Penguins kind of up at 1-2, who gets that third and final spot? Because, honestly, you can make an argument for any team.
Man, see, I don't know. Like, it's so tough. Like, this division is it's that tough. It's very much like the Atlantic Division. It's so crazy, but I think the Carolina Hurricanes will have that final spot. I still do think when Frederik Andersen is healthy, he's an extremely good goaltender. I do not think that the other teams in that division, I don't think the Flyers are going to do it. The Devils still got some time. Rangers might, but I don't think the Capitals are going to have it this year. Unless Ovechkin decides to get 60 goals again this year, so that's possible. I could see the Caps making it, but other than that, I think the Carolina Hurricanes will make it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also have Carolina in that third spot, just above Washington. Because I think Washington and Pittsburgh are in such a similar boat where every year, is this the year that they're going to be gone?
Yeah.
Is this the year that they finally regress? Now, I think the Penguins have better depth than the Capitals do, which is why I'm a little more confident. Obviously, probably Penguins bias in there too with me being a Penguins fan. But I do think the Penguins do have more depth, and I think they have better coaching. And I think that's going to provide a difference between maybe being in the top 3 in the division and being kind of like one of those wild card fringe teams. But by no stretch of the imagination am I writing off the Capitals. Carolina is an interesting one to me because they obviously have talent, but there are question marks in net in terms of health. Like you said, Freddie Andersen's a great goalie when he's healthy.
Yeah.
And I don't it still baffles me that they just got rid of Nedeljkovic for nothing because he would be such a solid backup option. He would make me feel secure about Freddie Andersen because if he gets injured, you throw Nedeljkovic in the net. I think that's fine. Yeah, and then also at Carolina, I wonder what their defense is going to look like because you lose a guy like Dougie Hamilton. Obviously, they still have tremendous talent defensively, but then also what's a locker room going to be like with a guy like Tony DeAngelo? I know that that's probably not actually going to be a big deal, but you never know because it was a big deal in New York. In fact, it became such a big deal in New York that it didn't matter how good he was out of there. And so it does raise that question. I think Carolina is still talented enough to be a playoff team. I don't see why they don't make the playoffs, but I think that because there are those lingering question marks, I kind of agree with you, and I have them slotted in at that number 3 spot.
Yeah, I think the Capitals' goaltending situation is good, but I don't think it's good enough if Freddie and Ronta can stay healthy. I think they're two very good goalies, Ronta and Freddie. But again, if one of them gets hurt, the other one's got to take the load. Look at what happened with Toronto, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So let's move on. Are you done with this division? You have anything else? Any final thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, I want to kind of just briefly mention the other 3 teams that we haven't talked too
Yeah,
much
absolutely.
about. So the Rangers, I have just missing the playoffs.
Yeah,
And I feel confident being able to say that because look, I don't want to say that one incident ruined them, but the Tom Wilson incident of last year has really hurt their progression.
yeah.
There's no need to deliberately make an effort to get tougher when you have when you have the team there. I think they sacrifice too much of their ability. I think that they're actually a worse team than they were last year, despite all this young talent that they have. And because of that, I think they just miss out. I have the Devils actually 6th and then the Flyers 7th. I think the Flyers aren't going to be able to put it together. Once again, probably just Penguin bias and I'm not a fan of the Flyers, but like I look at some of the guys that they've decided to bring in, and I don't necessarily like Rasmus Ristolainen is not going to fix your issues. Even if Carter Hart figures out how to stop the puck again, that's only going to help so much if the team in front of him isn't going to progress. And I think the Devils are going to take a huge step forward. I don't think they're going to be the bottom feeding team that they maybe were. I think the Devils this year are going to be what the Rangers were last year, which was a young team on the rise, still not quite yet in the playoff hunt, but clearly taking that next step towards it.
Absolutely. I actually agree. I think I agree with everything. I don't think the Flyers are going to be able to get it done. I always love some Philadelphia slander, I won't lie. Um, but I think Carter, I don't know if again, I don't know if it's too early to say Carter Hart's a bust, but he's definitely not playing the way he should be. Last year was not a good year for him, and I don't think this year will be either. I like the Rangers and the Devils and what they've done. The Devils might be like, I think the Devils I can agree like the Rangers, but I kind of like the Devils as like the Ottawa Senators of the Metro because they'll be a fun. They may not make the playoffs, but they'll be a fun team to watch this year.
Which I think is a perfect transition in the Atlantic because the Ottawa Senators in the Atlantic, I think are going to finish a bit higher than maybe people expect. But maybe we won't start there in the Atlantic. But we'll switch over to the Atlantic Division now. And or I guess to wrap up the Metro, I think we both agree. We have the Islanders first, Penguins second, Carolina third, and then do you also have Washington in fourth?
No. No, I do not. I think only three teams will come out of the Metro.
Oh, I mean, I'm not talking about whether they make the wild card, I guess, but so you have Washington fourth in the division, but missing the playoffs.
Correct.
Wow, okay, bold. I will not reveal whether the Capitals for me are a wild card team yet until we discuss the Atlantic. Clearly, Jacob confident in the ability of the Atlantic to put five teams into the playoffs. And you know what? I can't blame you because there is a lot of talent in the Atlantic. I think it's definitely the toughest division in the NHL this year. Obviously, you have the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions and the Tampa Bay Lightning. You have the Florida Panthers who are really looking to make a run at the Cup. The Toronto Maple Leafs who are looking to make a run at the Cup. You can't mention Toronto without mentioning the Boston Bruins who are also there. You have the Montreal Canadiens who made the Stanley Cup Finals last year. You have the Ottawa Senators who are a young, exciting team. And then there's Detroit and Buffalo. But, you know, not every team can be a shining star. And, Jacob, where do you want to take it with this division, the Atlantic?
I want to start with the bottom. The obvious ones. I don't think the Buffalo Sabres. I think Detroit has made excellent strides. I don't think they'll make the playoffs because of how talented this division is. Um, Same with Buffalo. Buffalo's just garbage. Did you see the stat of their attendance?
Yeah, they had like 8,000 fans at their home opener.
And Laval, Montreal's AHL team had like almost 9,000. So an AHL team sold out an arena while Buffalo didn't. It might be the restrictions in New York. They've been pretty strict with them. Like the Rangers don't have full capacity either. So maybe that's the reason why. But I genuinely believe those are all the Saber fans that actually give a shit this year because I want people to care more about the Bills. To be honest with you, the
Well, of
Bills are
course,
doing.
because the Bills are winning.
Yeah.
Buffalo hasn't won since 2007 when they had Daniel Briere on the team.
Oh my god. Like that's stupid. And I think people are more concerned on how the Bills are playing, and honestly, I don't blame them. Bills are doing
Yeah,
good.
when the last time Buffalo had a competent goalie, his name was Ryan Miller, and he was going to the 2010 Olympics. Like, this Buffalo team has been awful for so long. Their elite transcendental talent in Jack Eichel fucking hates the team and wants out because the team isn't letting him get the surgery he wants. Like, Buffalo is an absolute nightmare, and I think the fans are finally starting to give up on the team. I shouldn't say. The fans are finally starting to give up on the ownership of
Yeah.
the team.
Which is
Because
weird.
let's be honest,
Which is
it's the Pagulas.
which is weird because they own the Bills as well, and look what's happening over there. So it's very odd to say the least.
I mean, I think the solution there, the answer there is they're hands off with the Bills. The decisions being made for the Buffalo Bills are made by people who know football. I think her name is Kim Pagula.
Yeah.
She's literally the president of hockey operations for the Buffalo Sabres. Look, they're the owners of the team. I get that they can make the decisions if they want to, but the owners of the team are like, unless you're Mario Lemieux, who's like the owner of the Penguins,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, unless you're in hockey and just also happen to be the owner, you're probably not the right person to be making hockey decisions.
No, I agree.
It's your job to hire the people to make the right hockey decisions. That's why the Sabres are such a dumpster fire. I agree with you, Buffalo. I have Buffalo finishing 8th.
They're gonna be last in the league. There's no shocker there.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, Arizona might have something to say about that a little bit later on, but yeah, I definitely would slot Buffalo there as well.
Yeah, and then Detroit I think is gonna finish over them, and then I think Montreal's gonna be sixth. I think they took a serious step back. Carey Price is gonna be gone for a while, and they lost a lot of guys. Kotkaniemi, they lost to the Carolina Hurricanes. Deneau to the Kings. Like these are guys who are incredibly crucial to that run last year. And yeah, they did sign Nick Suzuki, which I mean, I don't know if it's too high or too low. I think it's a little high for him. It's a high risk, high reward, but um, they signed him, and I just don't think they have it. I don't think they have what it takes to make it back to the playoffs. Now,
Yeah, well,
yeah,
I mean,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead and finish your thought
That
if
was
you were
basically. I'm
still.
just saying, like, I just don't think that they have anything. Like, they don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that if you look at their cup run, a lot of it was based on the goaltending excellence of Carey Price and how they were very solid defensively. Shea Weber, it's a shame that he might not ever play an NHL game again. He's just such an iconic defenseman of the 2000s and 2010s. And yeah, I mean, obviously, Carey Price making the decision to prioritize his mental health, prioritize being fully healthy, both physically and mentally, is obviously the right decision, and I support him 100% in that. But obviously, yeah, but we know how dependent Montreal is on elite goaltending. Jake Allen's a good goalie. We know that Montreal trusts Jake Allen. There's a reason why all that expansion draft nonsense took place. It's because Montreal didn't want to lose Jake Allen. That's how much they care about, trust him. But yeah, I agree with you. I think this team is going to take a step back. In fact, so much that I have them 7th.
Oh.
I think I have them below Detroit. I think Detroit finishes 6th. I really like the young talent in Detroit. Like, you look at guys like Mo Seider, you look at Lucas Raymond, like, these guys, like, they basically have the Swedish and Finnish World Junior roster from, like, the last 5 years. This team has so much young talent, and obviously young talent can only get you so far right now. But, I mean, geez, watch out in Detroit. Obviously, you know who's in charge there in Detroit. Yzerman knows what he's doing. He's a smart guy. He builds championship teams. See Tampa Bay. He knows what he's doing. He's got so much young talent. They're making the small steps forward. And I think for them, the small step forward is from bottom 5 in the league, even worst team in the league. I think they're going to finish above Montreal and Detroit. I think those 3 teams, though, there's a significant drop-off between, I think, the top 5 and those bottom 3.
I agree.
And so I guess the next thing to ask you, since you said you think 5 teams come out of the Atlantic, That means you think the Ottawa Senators are going to finish 5th place in the Atlantic and make the playoffs as a wild card team.
I believe the Ottawa Senators have all the takes right now. They've locked up Brady Tkachuk. They got a lot of young talent. Forsberg looks ridiculous. Matt Murray, if he can stay healthy, figure it out. Then they got Gustafsson in rotation as well. I boldly will say on this podcast that I believe the Ottawa Senators will make the playoffs this year as a wild card team. And whether I'm right or wrong, that's up to whatever happens. But I believe the Senators have what it takes, and I do think they will take it. The only step back to this is either Pierre Dorian or Eugene Melnyk gets a great, quote unquote, great idea in the middle of the season to trade someone or trade for someone that makes their team worse. But other than that, as long as because I think they're just gonna have a fun. They're just gonna have a year. They're just gonna have some fun, play around, see what happens. Kind of like this team kind of reminds me of like the 2016-2017 Leafs. There's not too many expectations. There's a lot of talent, and I think it's a possibility that they make the playoffs.
I definitely think it's a possibility. And you know what? Like, honestly, I'd give them a fair shot. Like, I'd even be willing to say I think it might even be like 50-50 that this Senators team can figure it out and get into the playoffs. The reason why I'm still a bit hesitant is question marks in terms of goaltending and question marks in terms of this team isn't proven. Like, they've never played games that matter. So we've never seen them in games that matter.
But that's what I think is the good thing is they don't have the pressure. They don't have pressure or like expectations. That's why I think they'll do so well.
I completely agree with you until they get into a playoff run. Like, if we're talking it's March, April, last 10-15 games of the season, and they're right there in the playoff hunt, there might not be expectations, but there's still pressure there. Those games matter. Those are kind of de facto playoff games, and we're talking about a very inexperienced team. Now, once again, this is what I'm saying. They definitely could prove me wrong, and they could deliver in those games. I just don't know. And then also, Matt Murray and Marcus Hogberg.
No, so it's not Hogberg anymore. He went overseas. So it's either Gustafsson, Forsberg, or Murray.
Anton Forsberg, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. I mean, I'm sorry, but Matt Murray, he hasn't played like Matt Murray of 2016, 2017, and I don't know if he's going to recover to that point. And I know he's capable of it, but when it's been 3 years since you've been at your absolute best, I'm going to assume that you're not going to get back there like immediately right away again this year. And then those other two goalies are just very unproven. And because this is such a stacked division, if Ottawa's in the Pacific, if Ottawa's even in the Central, I'd give them better odds. It's the division that they find themselves in. They're kind of a victim of the top three in each division system this year.
Yep.
But I mean, hey, Leafs fans know that problem all too well.
Yeah.
I really do think it's going to be. I agree with you. Either way, it's going to be a fun season for Ottawa. I think if you're an Ottawa Senators fan, you're obviously really looking forward to this season, and I think it's going to be a fun season. I'm not ready to call them a playoff team yet. But I understand why you'd be willing to make that bet, because I think they have a very fair chance. In fact, this is going to bring me to my next point. I considered dropping Boston out of the playoffs because there are so many question marks about this team defensively and so many question marks about this team in net. I think Boston and Ottawa have very similar question marks in terms of what their roster looks like right now. It's just that Boston is a proven team, and at the end of the day, I will trust Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak over some of those young guys in Ottawa because those guys in Boston have won when it matters, and that's what's given me the edge. That's why I have Boston 4 in the division and getting a wild card spot, and Ottawa 5 and just missing out. But I think there are huge question marks, like is Swayman and Ullmark a good enough goaltending tandem? I know Ullmark is actually a pretty solid goalie. I think he's going to have a good year, but you have to ask question marks because Tuukka Rask has been so consistent for a decade in Boston. And it's not going to be him for the vast majority of this season with his injury.
Yeah, and Tuukka Rask is getting older, and injuries do hinder a player's performance. So I agree. I still think Boston will make it. Obviously, they're my fourth team in the division, and I think that obviously they will make the playoffs because Boston somehow, some way, they get it done. Like Pittsburgh with injuries, they somehow, some way get it done. So I have them fourth. Yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah,
But
so very similar so far. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, but the goaltending, you're 100% right. It's Allmark on a Buffalo team that was garbage had a better save percentage goals against than Frederick Anderson on Toronto. So it's more than likely that Allmark has a great year. I don't know if it's going to be good enough to beat some of the other teams in that division.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much a question mark of his ability because we know his ability. It's kind of just like, sometimes when a goalie moves to a new team, there can be a bit of a period of just getting used to it. My big question mark with Boston is their defense. Charlie McAvoy is a top five defenseman in the NHL,
Yes, he got paid
in my
like one
opinion.
too.
And I don't know. There are people saying this $9.5 million a year is too much. He's 23 years old and he's a top five defenseman in the NHL. Like, he's a top five shutdown defensive defenseman, and he can put up points. Like, McAvoy is so underrated. If people think he's not worth $9.5 million, he's absolutely worth $9.5 million. For like, if you look at defensemen 23 and under, I can really only think of actually, I think Adam Fox is also 23 and under, but like Adam Fox, Cale Makar, Charlie McAvoy is in that caliber. But outside of that, you look at Brendan Carlo, Matt Grzelcyk. They're solid, but they're not spectacular. Derek Forbort, Mike Riley, Connor Clifton, Jakub Zaboral. Like, these are all serviceable players, but they're not really, you're not getting anything too crazy. And so I think that Boston's going to have to be a team by committee, like a defense by committee, which has been proven. Penguins won 2 Stanley Cups on that system. I just need to see it to believe it with Boston. Outside of McAvoy, there are question marks about their defense.
I agree. I think that the defense can be well, we all know defense wins championships, and so you're right, they have to be by committee. So we'll see if McAvoy can carry most of the load for Boston this year.
Yeah, I mean, so we have Boston. We both have Boston 4, both have Ottawa 5. We've switched Detroit around and Montreal around 6, 7. We both have Buffalo 8, which leads us to our top 3. Who do you have winning the division? Who do you have 1, 2, and 3?
I have the Tampa Bay Lightning winning, and I don't think I don't know how close it is. I don't think it's too close. I have Toronto second. I have Florida third. A lot of people may call me crazy because Florida's better and they have actual goaltending. Bobrovsky has not proven himself in Florida. He's not. Spencer Knight has not had a full year as a backup. He came in, had 1 or 2 hot games, and now people are saying he's better than what the goaltending duo is in Toronto. I think Toronto has a better team. Matthews is coming back. They don't. Mikheyev will be gone. Yes, that sucks, but I think Michael Bunting has been an excellent replacement, and I think Toronto just looks better overall. I just, I, I just, I don't see Florida beating Toronto, and I don't see anyone beating Tampa.
Here comes my bold predictions.
You're gonna say Florida's winning it,
I have Florida winning this
and
division.
I'm not surprised.
I do have Florida winning this division. I think this is I think Tampa's a more complete team than them, but I'll get to that in a second. But Florida is a complete team. I think Barkov is so underrated. I think Crosby deserves a Selke every year just because he's severely underrated and just how great defensively he is. But I mean, if you're going to give the Selke to someone else, Barkov deserves that. He's the definition of a 200-foot player. They have depth all throughout that lineup. Defensively, they have so much talent defensively. Put some respect on Mackenzie Weegar's name. Guy can absolutely skate. He's a tremendous defenseman. And I agree with you, Bobrovsky's been shaky. But, this is the year where Bobrovsky needs to deliver because he's got Spencer Knight breathing down his neck, and he saw that in the playoffs last year. And that Florida team really tested Tampa in the playoffs. I have Florida winning the division. I have Toronto second, and I have Tampa third.
Oh, you think Tampa's coming third?
Because Stanley Cup hangover. They went back to back. They have played so much hockey, and in order to sustain such an elite level, the talent is there. I'm not denying Tampa Bay, in my mind, is still the most complete team in the NHL. But they lost their entire third line, which was the energy line for them. And they've played so much hockey over the last few years. We're in a tremendously talented division. I think the top three are kind of going to separate from the rest of this division. And I think Toronto and Florida just eke them out by a few points because Tampa doesn't care too much about the regular season. They're going to be, at the end of the day, it's just about making the playoffs. And so I think they're going to hit a bit of a lull. I mean, Pittsburgh played them off the ice in game 1 of the season, and then they've needed a 7-6 comeback against Detroit. Now, once again, those are just 2 games. But I can see that becoming a pattern this year where Tampa kind of tries to walk their way through the regular season, and they're more than talented enough to walk their way through the regular season. But I think if they do that, it's not going to be first place in the division. So, and I completely agree with you. This is a very talented Toronto team. As much as I want to sit here and make jokes about their playoff performances, this is the best Toronto team in this is probably arguably one of the most stacked Toronto teams of all time. In the history of the Toronto Maple Leafs. There's no reason that this team shouldn't be competing for the President's Trophy. There's no reason why this team shouldn't be going on a deep playoff run. The talent is there. I think if there's one question mark, it's goaltending, which I'm going to pass it on to you to talk about right now. But yeah, I think this Toronto team, obviously they're always a good regular season team. So I have Florida 1, Toronto 2, Tampa 3, but all creating space in that top 3. But I do want to ask you specifically about the Toronto Maple Leafs goaltending. Obviously, Campbell and Mrazek was supposed to be the duo. Mrazek's hurt. He'll miss about 2 weeks. So in order to, because they didn't have the cap space to call Michael Hutchinson until an emergency rule, some specific ruling. U of T's starting goalie, Alex Bishop, was the emergency backup goalie last night for the Toronto Maple Leafs. What a cool story that is for him. What was your take on all of that?
Did you know Alex Bishop was actually supposed to be was extremely close to being the goalie when the Leafs played Carolina, David Ayers situation. He was really close to being it instead of David. So I thought
I did not know that. That's cool.
I thought that was pretty cool too. I thought that, hey, you know what? This guy almost had action already, and then we had the whole David Ayers situation, and then Carolina and the rest of the NHL made sure we never forgot about that, which I don't want to talk about. I think Campbell's a starter, and I think people need to start realizing he's a starter. I think he's played phenomenal, and obviously it's only been 3 games, but Mrazek came in. Yeah, he got hurt, but Campbell came in the third period and didn't let any goals in. And I think Campbell has an opportunity here to run away with the goaltending position, the starting, especially with Mrazek being injured. And I think Campbell can be one of the best goalies in this division. And that's why I have Toronto second, because I still think Tampa is the best team in that division. I don't think they're the best team in the league, but I think they are the best team in that division. And frankly, I get why you say Florida, but I don't think that Florida is going to get it figured out. I don't. I really don't.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. I think Florida are kind of that polarizing team because there's some guys who are all in on them and think they're unbelievable. And then there are guys who are saying, well, they're good, but are they a true Stanley Cup contender? And I think this is the year where we'll find out what they actually are. Are they an elite team? Are they a true Stanley Cup contender? Or are they a good playoff team but just a good playoff team? So yeah, I could definitely see it going either way. I'm just choosing to. I trust what's going on down there in Florida, and I will agree with you. I do think Jack Campbell is the starting goalie. You just don't want to get into a situation where you're down a couple of goalies. But yeah, I mean, Mrazek's only going to be out for a few weeks. I don't think there's anything too much. I don't think you have to stress too much if you're a Leafs fan. Although I know Leafs Twitter is hilarious. First of all, shout out to Alex Bishop for talking about his midterms during this post-game press conference. Tell me you're a U of T student without telling me you're a U of T student.
Yeah, right.
And then also Leafs Twitter, man. People were saying, oh, that's why you got to trade the Tavares contract, because then you can have the cap space to call up Michael Hutchinson. Yeah. Let's trade our second line center to have the cap space to call up our third string goalie from the minors. Great take there, Leafs Twitter.
Yeah.
Always entertaining, Toronto Maple Leafs Twitter. It's always so funny.
No one said they were smart. They just have to have a job.
Yeah, I mean, some of the thing the thing about these markets, Toronto, Montreal, these hotspot hockey markets, is they freak out over everything, and it's just super funny to be just a fly on the wall in that conversation and just see everyone collectively lose their minds. When in reality, your backup goalie missing 2 weeks, in the grand scheme of things, not a big deal at all. So yeah, let's just move on then, wrapping up the Eastern Conference. So we both have Carolina, New York Islanders, Pittsburgh Penguins making the playoffs out of the Metro.
Yep.
I have the Washington Capitals also making the playoffs. You do not. And then in the Atlantic, we both have Tampa, Toronto, and Florida coming out of the Atlantic in the top 3. We both have Boston as a wild card team. You also have Ottawa as a wild card team, where I have them just missing. So let's move on now to the Western Conference, and I'm going to leave the Pacific Division, the absolute chaos of the Pacific Division, for last, and we'll go to the Central Division because, I mean, granted, I think the Central Division is very interesting too. The Central Division, in my mind, and you can provide your opinion if you agree or disagree with this, but I think in the Central, first place, everyone knows. The bottom 3, everyone knows, but it's those 2, 3, 4, and 5 spots in the middle that I think people have no idea what's going to happen.
So I want to hear your takes on it. Since you think it's a little easier than that, I'd like to hear what you think on this.
Yeah, so I have Colorado as the. Well, I think Colorado's I think Tampa and Colorado are the 2 most talented teams in the NHL. I think that if you just go off of probability, that's your Stanley Cup final. Although we'll talk about that in the future, and maybe why I don't think that's actually going to be the Stanley Cup final. But Colorado should win this division easily. That's the team that I have at the top. And then I think the 3 teams that are kind of just off the picture, Arizona, they're going to be fighting Buffalo for the worst team in the league status this season. And I mean, it's just, this is a tank, and it's a deliberate tank. They traded away literally everybody for draft picks. I think they have like 75 draft picks. I don't know who has more draft picks now, them or the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's a competition that they're having for sure. The Chicago Blackhawks, huge Marc-Andre Fleury fan. Boy, does that defense in front of him suck.
What defense? I've never heard of defense.
Yeah, they trade their best defensive prospect for Seth Jones and then pay him $9.5 million to turn the puck over and not play competent defense in front of. Yeah, I mean, Chicago, Patrick Kane, still elite. Alex DeBrincat, hugely underrated. Dominic Kubalik, hugely underrated. I guess Jonathan Toews is kind of there too.
Don't forget
Although
Kirby
I was never a Jonathan Toews fan. Kirby Dach, very solid. They have 0 defense. You can't win in the NHL with 0. And I genuinely mean they don't have a defense. They cannot play defense. Just 0 structure defensively. If you watch a Blackhawks game, it's their defensive structure is all over the place. Like, they look like a house league teams at times. I'm not exaggerating.
Marc-Andre Fleury is being left to dry in that team.
I mean,
I feel so
sorry,
bad.
go ahead.
I feel so bad for him. He did not want to get traded. He loved it in Vegas, and he was doing very well in Vegas. Just for him to get traded like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at Chicago's start to the season, they were outshot 17-2, I think it was, in the first period against Colorado. They obviously lose that game. Opening night. Then they lose to the Devils in overtime. I think they give up 5 goals to the New Jersey Devils. And we both think the Devils are going to take a step forward, but at the same time, they're still New Jersey. They're not an elite team by any stretch of the imagination. And then the Penguins put 4 past Fleury in 12 minutes. And one of the goals, absolutely Marc-Andre Fleury makes a mistake. With the mishandling of the puck.
Yeah,
but those other
go ahead, Labi.
Those other 3 goals. Yeah, those other 3 goals was just 2-on-1. The defenseman doesn't play the pass properly and puts the puck in his own net. Then just free shot from the slot that goes top corner, can't do anything about that. And then a 2-on-1 that goalies can't save a 2-on-1 if it's a cross crease pass and a one timer like NHL 21 style. Yeah, this team has no defense. And then the Nashville Predators, what's their average age, like 35? Nashville, I mean, Nashville's last 3 or 4 seasons has been rely on Pekka Rinne to save our ass and just pray. And it's worked because Pekka Rinne was that good. I like UC Saros. He's not elite Pekka Rinne in his prime good, at least not yet. If they come into this season with the whole our goaltending is going to bail us out, they're not going to go anywhere. So I think Colorado is clear at the top of this division, and I think Nashville, Chicago, and Arizona are nowhere near the playoffs.
All right. I mean, I really can't argue with you because as hockey fans, common sense kicks in, and if you think that Nashville, Arizona, and Chicago are playoff teams, you've never watched a single game of hockey in your life. So, yeah, I agree. I think that's all pretty reasonable. So now you have Minnesota, St. Louis, and Dallas and Winnipeg. Where do you place them?
This is where I think you can make a case for any of those teams finishing anywhere.
Yep.
The only thing I'm confident in saying right now, I still haven't fully decided on who I'm putting third, fourth, and fifth. I'm slotting Minnesota second. I'm all in on Kirill, Dolabil, the Thrill, Kaprizov, and the Minnesota Wild. I think they have good enough goaltending. Like it's still Cam Talbot, right?
It's
I'm
Cam
not
Talbot and Kakinen.
and Capo Kakinen. Yeah, look, I'm not like gonna sit here and pump Cam Talbot's tires and say he's like an elite goalie because he's not. But he's a solid goalie. He's not gonna win you games, but he's not gonna lose you games. And honestly, for most teams, they'll take a goalie like that. And Capo Kakinen looks like he has some potential, so I think that's a solid enough goaltending team. Same thing with their defense. I think it's solid enough. They got some good defensemen there. Spurgeon's solid, Dumba's solid. And obviously offensively, everything runs through Kaprizov. I think they have pretty good depth. I think, once again, I've been talking on this podcast that I think Joel Eriksson-Ek is so underrated. I think he's a top 5 underrated player in the league.
I picked him in fantasy because I know he's really good. So.
Yeah, I mean, I hope he gets points for you. He's more of a defensive-minded guy, but he can definitely score when he wants to. Yeah, I mean, I just think that they're a solid team where I trust them the most. I think they'll be the most consistent, and that's why I have them in second. I wonder if you agree, and then who else? What else are you thinking with those teams in the middle?
I have Minnesota in third. I have the Avalanche first, and I still think the Blues. I still think the Blues are a pretty decent team. I know they lost some defensemen over the season, so that's really gonna hurt them. But I think they're still like a decent team. I still think they'll make the playoffs. I still think they'll come in second. But I think you're right. I think Minnesota has just as good of a chance to be there and number 2 spot. So I could even see them beating St. Louis, and I wouldn't even be surprised. And then I have the Avalanche first. That's not that I don't know if you don't pick the Avalanche first, then you don't watch hockey. But then I have see it's tough between Dallas and Winnipeg because I don't like either of them. Winnipeg's got like no one. They have Connor Hellebuck. That's about it. Because Pierre-Luc Dubois is nothing like Patrick Laine. Do I think that Winnipeg will make the playoffs over Dallas? Yes. So I would put Dallas fourth. I would honestly put Dallas fourth and them making the playoffs. I think that's what it'll be, but I don't think Dallas is going to do anything in the playoffs. So Winnipeg would be third. Um, Dallas for St. Louis. I'm actually no, I take that back. I'm gonna go Avalanche. I'm gonna change it to the Wild. I'm gonna go St. Louis. Then I'm gonna go Winnipeg, and then I'm gonna go Dallas. And then the rest is like it doesn't matter who the rest is. None of them are making the playoffs.
Yeah, I have just one switch around with you. I have Winnipeg third, St. Louis fourth, Dallas fifth.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I think St. Louis, their cup run, I think was a one-off kind of year, and they definitely still have talent on this team. And I'll be honest, I was not a Jordan Bennington believer. I have to apologize to Jordan Bennington. I think he's recovered his form. I think he's a capable goalie. I don't think St. Louis's issues are Jordan Bennington.
I don't. I think he'll forgive you.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got 6 million reasons why he doesn't give a shit about my opinion, but that's also besides the point. Um, my issue is just with the depth that they've lost. I think I agree with you. Vince Dunn to Seattle is a huge loss. Like, I don't think people are talking enough about how big of a loss that is. Um, I mean, Falk, Krug, Pareko, Scandella, they have a decent enough defense. Um,
But
but I mean,
you're right. Is decent enough gonna get you to the playoffs or even win you a series?
yeah, and I mean, I like the steps that I think St. Louis is taking a step back and Winnipeg's taking a step forward. Like St. Louis also, I don't know if Tarasenko's gonna play,
Yeah.
like, and what that's going to look like. But we do know that he demanded a trade. That is something that we definitely do know. And the thing for Winnipeg is, I agree with you. I don't know what's going on with Pierre-Luc Dubois, but he's clearly not the guy. But, I mean, Wheeler, Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Nick Ehlers, Paul Stastny, there's enough talent there to score some goals. I really like the additions they've made defensively. Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon. You got Dylan DeMello, Neil Pionk, Josh Morrissey. I'm not here saying it's spectacular, but it's a good enough defense to put in front of Connor Hellebuck and say, I think this is a team that can keep the puck out of the net. Connor Hellebuck's a top 3 goalie in the NHL.
Well, yeah.
Actually, I think
there's no doubt there. He'll probably go up for a Vezina again.
yeah, I was gonna say honestly, right now I think the only argument I can make for a goalie that's better than him is Vasilevsky. Like it's Hellebuck and Vasilevsky as the two best goalies in the world right now. And a bit off topic, but as a Canadian, I'm a bit concerned that if we run into a hot goalie in the Olympics, say I don't know against the United States or I don't know, say against Russia, that might be a problem. Although, to be fair, when we have Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby shooting on them, maybe it won't be a problem. But that's a whole other discussion for a couple of months down the road. I think Winnipeg has enough to snatch the third spot. I think St. Louis still makes the playoffs as a wild card team in fourth. And, I mean, I like Dallas, but they're so old that I don't know. Because, like, over 82 games, is that a sustainable enough team? And then the other thing that I have to ask you, Jacob, is who's even going to be playing in net for Dallas? Because I swear they just have 3 40-year-old goalies. Like, Ben Bishop's injured.
Yep.
And then you have Hudobin and Holtby.
Don't forget Jake Ottinger. He's going to be the young gun.
Well, that's what I mean. You have 3 veteran goalies, and you don't even what? And then Ottinger, I feel like Ottinger should be at least the backup to give him a chance to get some NHL experience. I think he's good enough to be there, and he's not even going to get a look in. And the craziest thing too is Holtby's a new signing.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think Ottinger should be the backup, especially if he's going to be the future. Um, um, I don't think Bishop's going to touch the ice this year. He wants to, but I don't think he will. I think he's way too injured. I think his career is next to done. Yeah, I don't know. Like, Holtby is just not Holtby. He's not the guy that won the cup in 2018. He's not.
Yeah, I mean, he was awful last year. Let's call a spade a spade. He was awful last year.
He was terrible last year with Vancouver. He was one of the worst goalies in the league last year. And the fact that he's starting for the Dallas Stars, it kind of speaks to what their situation is, to be honest. It's not good.
Yeah, I see Dallas as a team that's like you said, they have some young talent. Like, you have Heiskanen, you have Esa Lindell, you have Jake Ottinger, but you have such a aging veteran core, and then you're bringing in more veterans. And I think Dallas is trying to say we're still a playoff team, but I think the depth in this division is saying they're not. Although, honestly, I still haven't decided whether I think Dallas is going to make the playoffs and there's going to be 5 teams from the Central. But I think that's probably the best. Well, I guess I'll ask you. Do you think that it's going to be 4-4 in the West, or do you think
Yeah,
it's going to be 5 and
I
3?
think it's gonna be 4-4 in the West.
And with that, we'll switch over to the last division, which is the Pacific Division. And I think that the Pacific Division is completely wide open. Um, I think that this is the weakest division, but because it's the weakest division, it's the most wide open. It also features the Seattle Kraken in their first season in the NHL. We're up to 32 teams now in the NHL, 8 teams per division. Makes it a lot easier to break through each division and break down each team. Um, I don't know whether you want to start at the top or at the bottom or what you think's going on, but I'll let you just take control of wherever you want to go here with the Pacific.
So I think you and I can both safely say Vegas is gonna win this division. I don't think there's much of an argument from either of us there.
Ooh, about that.
Really?
I have Edmonton winning this division.
I don't think so. I think Edmonton's 2 lines is not gonna win them the division. Listen, I think that Vegas still has a very complete team. And I think that Vegas will still use this complete team to their complete advantage. Shea Theodore, Alec Martinez on defense, and then you have Stone, Pacioretty. Yes, Pacioretty will miss some time with an injury. Carrier, all these guys. Stevenson, who I arguably think is a top 20 center in the league. You see Connor McDavid's line, McDavid, Hyman. I think it's Draisaitl on. Is it Draisaitl on the last?
No, I think they're splitting up Draisaitl and McDavid, which is going to go to why I think they actually could win this division.
But they did
I believe
that
it's
last
Nugent
year. They did
Nugent
that
Hop.
last year.
They did. I think it's McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, Hyman right now.
Okay, so that's their first line, which don't get me wrong, not a bad first line at all. But I see. I can't get past that. I can't get past the fact that they only have 2 lines, and it's not good enough to win a Stanley Cup. I think Vegas is better. I think the goaltending is better in Vegas. I think Leonard versus Mike Smith. Leonard's going to win that. I think defensively, I don't think Nurse is as good as people say he is. I really don't. I think he's completely overpaid. I think that yes, Hyman and that first line is excellent, and Hyman, good for him for getting a contract with a team like that. But I really don't see them making the playoffs, or not necessarily not making the playoffs, but not winning that division for sure.
Yeah, I, I can definitely see it. I think that Vegas is probably the safe choice.
Just let me ask you, defensively, who do you have in that division?
Defensively, the best team in the division is Vegas.
Yes. Goaltending wise, between the Oilers and Vegas, who wins that?
In theory, it's Vegas.
Vegas, and yes, offensively, you're obviously going to have the Edmonton Oilers with the better team with McDavid, Draisaitl, and Hyman, but you can't tell me that line alone is going to win you the series, the division. It's not.
Absolutely not. I agree with you there. Edmonton is just I don't know what to expect from this team. This is a team that is going to be playing Duncan Keith and Cody Ceci as a defensive partnership.
And Tyson Barrie and Nick Nurse. Darnell Nurse.
I completely agree with you. I don't think Darnell Nurse is worth 9.25. Kia Nurse is the better athlete. Just throwing that out there. Shout out Canada Women's Basketball.
Nick Nurse is the best. Changed my mind.
No, it's Kia Nurse, then Nick Nurse, even though Nick Nurse is not related to Kia or Darnell. No. And then it's Darnell Nurse.
There we go.
I mean Tyson Barrie, Darnell Nurse, Duncan Keith, and Cody Ceci as your top 4 is just so funny to me. And it's even funnier that it might fucking work, at least in the regular season.
I'm sorry, I don't think it'll work. I do not think it'll work.
And I completely sympathize with your viewpoint that it won't work because I don't know how it could work, but it could, because hear me out. This is a team that screams regular season success to me. This is a team that doesn't really have a lot of defense, but has a shit ton of offense. I can see them winning 7-6 games regularly in the regular season, piling up the regular season wins, and then ultimately crashing out in the first round of the playoffs. And honestly, if I can be honest with you right now, that's kind of what I see this team. I'm kind of looking at what my predictions are, and granted, these are probably going to be very wrong, but if Edmonton wins the division, I think Colorado's definitely the one seed in the West. So Edmonton's going to pick up the stronger of the wildcard teams if they win this division, which means they're going to face Winnipeg or St. Louis or one of those teams. So honestly, my genuine prediction for the Edmonton Oilers this year, McDavid puts up crazy numbers like usual. Draisaitl puts up crazy numbers like usual. Somehow Duncan Keith and Cody Ceci work as a defensive partnership. Mike Smith does enough in the net to let in 5 goals instead of 7 so that they can win games. And then they get bounced in the first round of the playoffs by Winnipeg or St. Louis, or a team that can play better defensively and plays the playoff system of hockey better. But we're talking regular season, and I think Edmonton wins because Vegas, I think they were too reliant on having both of those goalies. No disrespect to Robin Lehner, he's a fantastic goalie, but it's just Robin Lehner this year. If they get into any kind of issues, they don't have Marc-Andre Fleury to back him up. And I think that they're going to learn that. And also, I mean, they're coached by Pete DeBoer, and I can't back a Pete DeBoer team. He's just I just hate him as a coach. I can't pick a Pete DeBoer team to do well. And it's making me pick Edmonton, which I hate because I should hate Edmonton even more with the way their team is built. But I actually have Edmonton first, Vegas second.
I don't even know who Edmonton's coach is, to be honest with you.
Neither do I, but I mean, they're just it's Holland's team, and that just should be wrong. That a team with Holland building the team, I think are going to win the division.
I don't think so. I really don't. But anyways, we're gonna disagree on that, and that's okay because we make very terrible takes, but it's okay. We're here to have fun. So you have Edmonton, I have Vegas. What are your choices after that? So either way, that's our 1-2 punch. We just flip it.
Yes.
I will agree with you. I think Edmonton will come second. Who do you have third? Because I think I'm gonna have an unpopular opinion.
Oh, I think my third. I have Seattle third.
Oh, never mind. I have Seattle third too. I take it back.
Okay,
Not so unpopular.
There we go. Yeah, I like the Kraken team. I don't think that there's anything that jumps out to me as spectacular, but I think they're just a solid team. And I think that in this division, that's good enough.
Here's where I might make a very bold prediction. My final wildcard team will be the Los Angeles Kings.
I have the Kings as my final, as fourth in making the playoffs as well.
Yeah, great minds think alike. What can I say? I think the Kings, Anze Kopitar, still one of the best centers in the league, still excellent for that team. Jonathan Quick, maybe not the goalie he was 5 years, but Cal Peterson looks really good. And I just think getting Deneau is a huge plus, and I just think they look like a good team. I think they make the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you. Kopitar is still elite. People aren't realizing that. Patterson's a solid goalie, as you said. People aren't realizing that. And I think that the young talent that this team has, not to mention they bring in Phillip Deneau, and if anyone has been listening to this podcast going back to the playoffs last year, everyone was talking about, oh, Carey Price is so great. And yes, Carey Price is so great. No one was talking about Phillip Deneau. Phillip Deneau was locking down elite players. Phillip Deneau locked down Austin Matthews. He locked down Mark Stone. He was phenomenal. Anze Kopitar and Phillip Deneau as a 1-2 center punch is the best defensive 1-2 center punch in the NHL. And it's not fucking close.
Yeah.
They're both Selke caliber 200-foot players. And that's the perfect backbone to a team that just throws young talent around them. They have decent depth. Victor Arvidsson, Adrian Kempe, Alex Iafallo, and then I guess we both trust in the youngsters: Gabe Vilardi, Arthur Kaliev, Blake Lizotte. It's unfortunate that Quentin Byfield is injured to start the season because I'm very excited to see him finally play for the LA Kings.
But he will be back, so
he will be back. And then defensively, I mean, Drew Doughty's not elite anymore, but he's still a competent defenseman. He's still a good defenseman.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't, as much as I dislike him, I do think he's still got a lot of talent, and I still think he's got a lot of fight in him.
And I mean, Ole Mata has, since he left Pittsburgh, where he was a fucking pylon, he's carved out a really good couple of years in Chicago and LA. He's been solid. Alex Edler's 35. He's in the last year of his deal. He'll do all right. But I mean, I think right now, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for me, I'm picking the Kings over Vancouver and Calgary as I think the two other teams that have a shot, just because I don't trust Vancouver and I don't trust Calgary.
No, I literally agreeing with you. I think Demko's not going to have enough help. I think that Markstrom is honestly, I'm going to say Markstrom's overrated. Look what happens when you take him off a team that had good defense. I don't think Calgary's good at all. I do not. I think Goudreau needs to be traded.
Yeah, I agree with you. The only thing I'm cautious about with saying Seattle 3, LA 4 is Vancouver could mess up those plans. Vancouver's good enough to make the playoffs.
I don't
That's the
think.
only team
I
that
don't
I'm
think so.
unsure about.
I do not think so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't think they will. That's why I have them fifth. But I think Vancouver's the one team that worries me in that division. I completely agree with you. I don't think Calgary, like, there's something wrong with Calgary because the amount of talent that's on that team, and they just haven't made changes. They keep sending the same lineup out year after year, expecting that this is the year they put it together, and they just haven't put it together.
The core of Goudreau is gone. It is now Kachuk, Dubé, and Monahan.
And even then, like Kachuk and Monahan have been around for a few years, and like
Yeah.
I especially Monahan. Like Monahan, I think had an elite rookie year, maybe an elite sophomore year. Like one of his first 2 years was great, and ever since then he's kind of just been average.
Not even average. He's been not good. Like statistically, he's been bad. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on with Calgary either. I thought they would. I thought after having some good. I think you know what it was. It was that 2018 series against or 2019 series against the Avalanche. They win 4-0 their first game and then lose like three in a row, four in a row. I think that was it. I think that was it for them. I think losing Mike Smith was huge. I think he was a huge part of that season. And their goaltending, I don't think Markstrom is good. I do not think Jacob Markstrom is elite.
yeah, no, I agree with you there. And then I guess the last two teams to talk about, which are the two teams that we both, I guess, have at the bottom of the Pacific Division, are the San Jose Sharks and the Anaheim Ducks. Anything particular you want to say about those two
I
teams?
think Anaheim has a much brighter future than San Jose, and I don't think it's close. Trevor Zegras, what was he got? McTosh? Was it? What's his first name? Malcolm McTosh or something. He's a rookie for the Ducks. And then there's Drysdale as well as Gibson, still one of the best goalies in the league, probably losing his mind in Anaheim. I still think
Yeah,
that
Mason McTavish is
Mc,
who you're thinking about.
McTavish, yes, that's what I meant. Thank you. Uh, and I just San Jose is just San Jose. There's nothing good there. Eric Carlson still thinks he's one of the best. I think he's speaking out of his ass. Um, I don't even think he's remotely close to being one of the best. I think his injuries. He's a Terminator. He's part cyborg. With all the injuries and surgeries he's had, I do not think he's elite anymore. I do not.
Yeah, I mean, we've both been saying the running joke of he's got like more metal in his one of those ankles than he does skin at this point, and I agree with you. I don't think he's elite anymore, and it's not his fault. It's just the injuries that have piled up, which is unfortunate because honestly, and I know we say it all the time whenever we talk about the Sharks, but like Eric Carlson that year in Ottawa, he was the best player in the world at
And
that point.
I think he's
Like
holding on to that. That's
well, I
all.
mean, yeah,
Yeah,
and it's tough when you were literally the best defenseman in the world, and then you get hurt, and you just never able to get back to that form. It's got to be tough for him to have to deal with that.
but he's got to come to that conclusion that he's just not that good anymore. He's playing. He's like a broken dude, and he's just not playing the way he should be. He's not.
Yeah, and I mean,
Go ahead. That's all I had to say about that.
yeah, and I mean the problem with San Jose, to your point, is all these guys is they're getting paid like they're these guys, and they're not these guys anymore, and I mean. I'm shocked that they have $8 million in cap space now that I'm looking at them on Cap Friendly. Um, because I don't know how that's even possible. But, Brent Burns is getting paid $8 million for the next 4 years. Erik Karlsson's getting paid $11.5 million for the next 7 years.
Oh, that
Mark
contract.
Edward,
Oh, that's just
yep.
that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, outside of, oh my God, what's the guy's name in Buffalo who can't, outside of Jeff Skinner, I think Erik Karlsson probably has the worst contract in the NHL.
Yeah. Oh my. I didn't realize like he had 7 more years on it. That's fucking brutal.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, 6 more years. Sorry. 6 more years at 11.5.
Oh, only 6 years. Oh man.
Not much better. Burns 4 more years at 8. Mark Edward Vlasic 5 more years at 7 million. Yeah. And I mean, Logan Couture making 8. I don't think that's an overpay, but like at the same time, it's for 6 more years until he's 38. So which Logan Couture is still a great player. But they are also paying Martin Jones for the next 6 years because they bought him out. Because remember, Martin Jones, they thought he was an elite goalie. Haha, isn't that so funny? But yeah,
That's
I
a
mean,
great joke.
San Jose is just a victim of their salary cap situation. They paid all those guys that got them to the Stanley Cup final. Well, we're looking 5 years ago now,
Yeah.
and they're not that level anymore. Anaheim, I agree with you. They have a lot of really young talent, really great young talent. English is hard sometimes, but also these guys are 20, 19, 18 years old. They're going to be bad this year. But it's going to be okay because Ducks fans get to cheer for the young players who will hopefully take them to the playoffs in the next 3 to 5 years.
And that's the difference between San Jose and Anaheim. Is Anaheim knows they're going to be bad. Like the Senators knew they were going to be bad for a few years. Their fans did too. But it's all part of the rebuild, which San Jose just can't seem to get a hold of.
Yeah, there's a good bad and a bad bad. The good bad is we know we suck, but we're giving all these great young players a chance to develop.
Yeah.
And this is the bottom. We're at the bottom, but we're walking up. Versus a team like San Jose where they're crashing down. They were very close to the top. They were 2 wins away from the Stanley Cup, and it's just been downhill, and they're tumbling towards the bottom. And obviously there's a huge difference between those two perspectives. So there you go. There's a breakdown of all 4 divisions, all 32 teams in the NHL. Before we get into some award predictions, let's just do some very premature and probably very wrong predictions in terms of the Stanley Cup. So what's your Eastern Conference final and what's your Western Conference final? And we'll just start with that before we go to the Stanley Cup and the winner.
All right. Do you want an honest answer or would you like a biased Christmas answer?
I mean, just as a heads up, I will be picking Pittsburgh to get out of the Metro, and that's my honest and not biased answer. So do with that information what you will.
See, my answer is biased and it's legit. If the Leafs can figure it out, because like you said, they do have a President's Trophy, like team. They do on paper. It's just figuring it out. If here's my prediction. If the Leafs make it past the first round, I think they're going right to the finals. I think it's the first round like hump that they have to get over, and then once they get over that, I think they're just gonna start rolling. I do. So if the Leafs make it out of the first round, it'll be Toronto versus Pittsburgh. If they can't get out of the first round, it'll be Tampa versus Pittsburgh.
And then in the Western Conference?
I believe it'll be the Avalanche, probably versus Vegas, and that would be a rematch of last year.
Yeah, I also have Colorado versus Vegas. I want to say something different, but especially looking at the predictions that I've made with the season, I just did a mini playoff bracket, and I mean, it's just Vegas would have to beat Seattle and then St. Louis en route to the conference finals the way my season goes, and I can't say bet against that. Meanwhile, Colorado would have LA and then either Minnesota or Winnipeg. I also can't bet against that. So I also have Colorado, Vegas. In the East, I have Florida, Pittsburgh. I think this is Florida's year to really jump out and make a statement. And then also with I think they'll win the division, which means that it will be Toronto, Tampa in the first round, and I think that those two teams will kill each other in a 7-game series. That Toronto probably finds a way to choke. Sorry, Jacob. But either way, I think that I will say I think whoever wins the Atlantic Division will be in the Eastern Conference Finals because they'll get to avoid one tough round. And the way I have it, I have Florida winning, which means they avoid the tough first round matchup. Instead, Toronto and Tampa have to battle it out, which is why I think Florida emerge. Pittsburgh, for me, I mean, I honestly think this might be the last year, and I know I said it last year, but this might be the last year where I can say Pittsburgh and have it be a legit prediction. They look really good to start the season. I'm never going to bet against Crosby and Malkin to find a way to get to another Stanley Cup. So, yeah, I'm going to go Florida-Pittsburgh. And so now your Stanley Cup final and Stanley Cup champion prediction on October the 17th at 8:45.
I believe the Colorado Avalanche will win the Stanley Cup. I believe that they have what it takes. I believe they have the skill, the personnel, and the drive to win. I think that this will be the year the Avalanche finally get it done, and they win the Stanley Cup.
And so who gets out of the Eastern Conference? So who do they beat in the finals for you?
Either Tampa or Toronto. That's who I think is going to make it all the way.
Yeah, I have Pittsburgh beating Colorado in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Oh, shocker there.
Yeah, like I said,
no bias, right?
No bias at all. Look, the Pittsburgh Penguins are always a Stanley Cup contender so long as Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang play for them. Are they the smartest pick? No, but then again, the reason we play the games is because anything can happen. And look, I think we both went off the board and didn't pick Tampa to three-peat because, let's be real, the likelihood of a three-peat is very difficult. And so I think with that, I do think that that Atlantic is going to be so tough. I think if you look at a team, like to have to get through Toronto, Tampa, Florida, and I mean, I know the Metro is going to be tough too, but I don't know. I just think this is the last year I can say Pittsburgh and actually not sound crazy saying it. And I do truly believe that the Pittsburgh Penguins can win the Stanley Cup this year.
Hey, listen, man. Flyer fans think Hart's going to win a Vezina. What you're saying is not too crazy.
And speaking of the Vezina, I think this is the perfect time to pan over to some award predictions.
Labi, I got to say, your segues are on point tonight.
Thank you. What can I say? We've been doing this podcast for a year. You pick up some tricks along the way, doing this for as many hours as we've been doing it over the last year or so. So yeah, with these award predictions, I mean, I want to save MVP for the end. You know, keep the viewers and the listeners in suspense. And I think since we pivoted to this topic on the Vezina, let's start with the Vezina. Who's going to win the Vezina this year?
I actually think it's going to be Darcy Kemper of the Avalanche. I think he's been held back in Arizona for far too long, and I think that on the team he has with the defense in front of him, I think it's his to lose. I think obviously there's going to be a lot of good picks, like Vasilevsky still exists, that guy, and then Connor Hellebuyck's up there. I think Darcy Kemper's going to have an absolute stellar year this year.
Yeah, I think this is a real tough one. Typically, the Vezina goes to a goalie who plays on a really good team, but is also kind of has that reputation of being a good type of a good goalie. And so for that reason, and this might sound crazy, but I part of me wants to say, Ilya Sorokin.
Wow, okay, that is crazy.
I don't think it's going to happen because Varlamov's going to come back from his injury. They're going to split the crease, and then with the Islanders' reputation of being this defensive system, I think that's going to work against them.
Okay.
And so I think that statistically, Ilya Sorokin might have one of the best statistical seasons. But yeah, I think in the end, it's going to come down to, I think Kemper, Vasilevsky, and Hellebuyck are probably going to be the three nominees. And I think because Vasilevsky won last year, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I believe
Hellebuck
so.
won two. No, Fleury won last year. What am I saying? How dare I disrespect my favorite player?
I thought you
But
were
yeah,
a
Fleury
Florida
won
fan,
last
man.
year.
Come on.
Hellebuck won 2 years ago. So Vasilevsky wins this year.
Yeah, that's probably how it'll go, which is so stupid the way it works.
Yeah, no, some of these awards just become way too predictable. And to be fair, goalie is one of those positions that's very hard to evaluate, because the statistics don't necessarily tell the full picture. Because hey, your goals against average and save percentage, like your goals against average, just speaks to how good the team is in front of you defensively.
Yeah.
And like anyone's save percentage can be good if you're facing slap shots from the blue line, compared to anyone's save percentage can be bad if you're facing 3-on-1s all night.
This is true.
Um, but yeah, I think moving on to probably the next toughest award to predict, just because same thing, the Norris for defensemen. Because does the Norris go to the best defenseman, or does the Norris go to the defenseman who just scores the most points?
Well, last year it went to the best defenseman. That was good to see the NHL actually got that right.
That is very true. Fox was a very deserving winner. Who do you think wins the Norris this season?
I think it'll be Cale Makar. I think he didn't win it last year. He hasn't won it yet, and I think he's gonna. Like I said, I think Kemper will win the Vezina. I think the Norris will go to Makar, and I think Colorado's just gonna have an unbelievable season this year.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to pick a different player, but I mean, it like I said, I mean the fact that Makar is just a capable defenseman who also puts up crazy points, that is definitely going to help a lot. I'm going to pick Cale Makar as well, but in order to be a bit different, I'm going to predict, I think the three finalists are going to be Makar, Adam Pelech of the Islanders. I think he finally is going to get the respect he deserves, and Aaron Ekblad, because I'm all in on Florida this year, so I might as well. And he scored 2 goals for Florida against Pittsburgh a couple nights ago.
I know.
So if Aaron Ekblad puts up points, continues to be the shutdown defenseman that he's been, and Florida does well, there's no reason he can't win the Norris. But so you know what? I'm changing my answer to Aaron Ekblad. Let's go.
I know. Sam Bennett was. Well, I mean, Sam Bennett was huge for my fantasy, but yeah, I mean, Ekblad has kind of been not shunned upon, but just kind of like looked over,
Forgotten for sure, yeah.
which is sucks. This kid was he was first overall at one point, no?
Yeah, I believe he was the first overall pick back in
2015?
2015, the year before McDavid, right?
Yeah, so 15. No, McDavid was 15. He was 14. Ekblad was 14.
Yeah, because Matthews was 16
Yeah.
or 15. Yeah,
No,
yeah, yeah.
Matthews was 16.
Sorry, Matthews was 16, McDavid was 15, Ekblad was 14. Yeah, we know our hockey guys, totally.
Yep, we're a hockey only channel. We promise.
So yeah, there you go. Moving on to, let's talk about some rookies, just because, once again, does this actually, like, with the definition of rookie, who's going to win the Calder? Because I don't think it's going to necessarily go to one of the rookies that was just drafted this year.
Who do you think is going to go to?
Well, I'm just going to point out that Kaapo Kähkönen is considered a rookie still.
Yeah,
just throwing that out there.
yeah, which is a little weird to me, but I understand, I guess, why.
Yeah, I just want to pull up like all of the players who are eligible, because I don't want to forget about like an older player who is eligible. Obviously, Cole Caulfield is still eligible despite scoring goals for fun in the playoffs. Trevor Zegras. Quentin Byfield, but he's going to be injured. Spencer Knight is the other guy I was thinking about. Spencer Knight and Kaapo Kähkönen are both Calder eligible, despite, are they really Calder eligible? Because they literally were, like, anyways, they're Calder eligible, just in case you wanted to throw that out there. Who do you think is going to win the Calder?
I'm very high on Zegras. I really am. I think Zegras will win it. I like the way he plays. He's a very stout young man, the way he carries himself, and he's just a great player overall. I think that he's going to win it.
So I'm going to go a bit bold on this one. And I was talking about, you got to trust the man with the plan, and I'm not talking about the Shanna plan. I'm talking about Steve Yzerman's plan in terms of some of those guys that they have out there. And I feel like Lucas Raymond or Moritz Seider on the Detroit Red Wings, and I really like Moritz Seider, and I want him to win the Calder Trophy this year. So I'm gonna pick Moritz Seider to win the Calder Trophy from the Detroit Red Wings. This guy, if you haven't heard about him, because he might have been forgotten, he was drafted 6th overall in 2019. Still hasn't played in the NHL yet, but last year he played in the Swedish Elite League, the top league in Sweden, and he won the he won the Norris Trophy in the equivalent of the Swedish Elite League, and then won Best Defenseman at the World Championships last year for Team Sweden. He's 6'4", he's 20 years old, he's Calder eligible, and I think he's going to be one of the best young defensemen in the NHL, and I think he's going to win the Calder.
Wow, bold prediction. But hey, like I'm all up for like upsets, quote unquote upsets for Calder. But not gonna lie, I never heard of the guy. But now I'll have to keep an eye out on the Yzer plan.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's some of the problem with the North American side of things is like we're so used to seeing our prospects in the CHL or in the NCAA, and then in the AHL potentially. If you're a huge fan, like obviously I'm sure, Jacob, you're aware of like a couple of the top guys who are playing with the Marlies right now, and just being kind of aware of that. But these Finns, these Swedes, these Russians who are playing in the KHL, in the Swedish Elite League, in Liga in Finland, it's a lot harder to kind of keep tabs on these guys, and you can kind of forget that they exist.
Yeah. So yeah. You know what? I think Detroit's gonna just be a fun team to watch. They're gonna lose a lot of games, but they're gonna be fun to watch for sure. So I'll keep an eye out for him.
Definitely, yeah, and I think that's why I think Detroit's going to finish ahead of Montreal, just because I think Moritz Seider and Lucas Raymond, their last 2 draft picks, who have both been playing in Europe, I think they're going to come to the NHL and they're going to have great rookie years. Moving on to the Selke Trophy now, best defensive forward, of course, won by Barkov. We've been shouting out so many great defensive forwards the entire episode, like Eric Sinek and Kopitar and Philip Deneau. Of course, there's Sidney Crosby. This is an award that's also been regularly won by Sean Couturier. Mark Stone has been trying to claim this award. Who do you think's going to get it?
Well, you already said it. I think Andre Kopitar is going to get it, and he's going to lead the Kings to a playoff series. I think that's what I think that's the main guy that they need to that's gonna that's gonna be huge for the Kings, and I think that if he plays the Selke like they're gonna make the playoffs and he's gonna win that trophy.
Yeah, I think if the Kings make the playoffs, that might really help boost his chances. I want to sit here and say Sidney Crosby's finally going to win a Selke, but he's injured to start the season, and he never wins the fucking Selke, even though he deserves it. So I think this is the year they give it to Mark Stone. He's just a tremendous defensive forward. He's a guy whose name's kind of been discussed more and more and more, and I think this is the year they finally give him the trophy. But yeah, I definitely think if the Kings make the playoffs, Kopitar definitely gets nominated, and honestly might even go on and win it. I think that's a very good choice. Next, we have some of those awards that just get we know who's going to win them because it's just who gets the most. So Art Ross for most points, and then the Rocket Richard for most goals in the league.
So I'd like to hear your Rocket Richard, and then I'll tell you my Art Ross for the most points.
Yeah, well, I mean, Art Ross, I'm going McDavid because I'm not a moron. Although I think McKinnon or Draisaitl could get there. Rocket Richard, I'm going Austin Matthews. He's only missed 2 games. He returns tomorrow night for the Leafs.
Yeah.
I think he can stay healthy. I think he can play the rest of the 80 games of the season. I think he can get at least 50. I think he could even get close to 60. There are obviously some other guys who are going to score a lot. I think Ovi's still going to score a ridiculous amount. Like, same thing, never bet against Crosby, never bet against Ovechkin. He's going to keep scoring until he retires. But yeah, I think this is Austin Matthews. Well, did he win last year?
Yeah, he was the
Yeah,
only
yeah,
lead. But then
yeah.
all people will do last year is they'll take the credit away because it
North
was
Division, North Division.
the North Division. Yeah, there's still hockey players and they play in the NHL. People don't realize that.
I'm
Um,
assuming you have Matthews as well for the Rocket
I actually don't have Matthews. I have Nathan McKinnon. I think
for most goals. Wow.
I think McKinnon is just gonna light it up on the power play. Like I just Landeskog, Rantanen, McKinnon on a power play unit is it's just disgusting. Like it's just nasty. They're gonna make a lot of teams pay on the power play. I think that's what'll happen. And I think obviously I know Matthews. Obviously, you look at Matthews' wrist shot. Um, it's just so pretty to watch. I think it'll be a tight race between the two. McDavid will be up there, but I don't think he'll have as many goals as either of those two. I think it'll be Mac that takes it.
Yeah, and then Art Ross, are you going McDavid for most points, or do you think it's going to someone else this year?
I think it's gonna go to Draisaitl, and I think it's just gonna be because he's on the line with McDavid. But it's either McDavid or Draisaitl in my opinion. So, um,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't disagree with you there at all. Actually, one name or two names I kind of want to shout out, partially because I think they can do it, partially because I have them both in fantasy. Although apparently Kucherov's going to be hurt, so my fantasy team is fucked. But if Kucherov is hurt, or maybe I swear if they do the LTIR 2 years in a row on Kucherov, everyone's going to lose their goddamn minds. But
technically not illegal though.
technically not illegal. And this goes back to my theory of a team should trade for Jack Eichel, give him his surgery, stash him on LTIR, and then just bring him in for the playoffs because, like, that actually could be a very winning strategy. But hey, I'm not a GM, so what do I know? But yeah, I think that if Kucherov isn't injured and plays a full season, he could easily win Art Ross. And Steven Stamkos has come out scoring to start the season. A lot more than I thought he would. I picked him up in fantasy because I'm like, yeah, he'll score like 30, 35 goals because he's a good goals. He's scoring goals, man. He could be trying, like, he's hit 50 before. Maybe he hits 50 again this year. I don't think he's going to win the Rocket Richard, but I think he could be up there.
Well, and that's kind of the beauty about this is anyone can be a winner at like anyone can be a hero or a victor at any time. Like we look at that Stanley Cup Finals and Ross Colton, a fourth liner, got the winning goal. So everything
Yeah,
is possible.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think it was Ross
Yes.
Colton.
Yeah, it was. It was. So that's a good callback all the way to last year.
Yeah.
So let's go now to two more awards to get through. First is Coach of the Year, and I'll go first with this one. I think that obviously Coach of the Year, it normally goes to who's the coach who took the worst team to the best spot. And so because of that, I have a few options that are really going to enter my mind. And that is first, I think if I'm so big on the Florida Panthers, and I know they're an elite team, but if Florida actually wins that division, then I think that they could maybe get some recognition for Joel Quenneville, especially because it's Joel Quenneville. I think that if the Kings make the playoffs, you could look at potentially Tom McClellan. I think if the Kraken make the playoffs, you could be looking at Dave Hackstall. But the guy who I think should win this award, because I don't know how he hasn't won this award, Mike Sullivan of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I know the Penguins are considered this great team, but I would argue this year they're not. And if he can get this team up at the top of the Metropolitan Division, missing Crosby and Malkin to start the season, with all the question marks surrounding this team, I think he's a top three coach in the NHL, and I think this is the year he finally gets that credit.
I kind of agree with you to be honest. The fact that he doesn't have one is kind of sad. Feels like that's a criminal offense. Um, Yeah, I can definitely see him. Like you said, Pittsburgh this year not the best team. They're not. Um, so to see them make the playoffs with the team they have, like you said, put an AHL team there and they can still have a good shot at the playoffs. Mike Sullivan's definitely in conversation there. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll pencil you in for saying Mike Sullivan then, because we love Mike Sullivan here on this podcast. Once again,
Isn't he
when
also coaching Team USA?
he is also coaching Team USA, it's the first time and only time that I'll ever be cheering against him. But it won't matter because, although I guess, hey, if Mike Sullivan can have the Penguins win games with an AHL team, he can win games with a team that Stan Bowman chooses. Once again, the fact that Stan Bowman, given all the controversy surrounding the Chicago Blackhawks right now, is allowed to be the general manager of the USA team is honestly a disgrace, but that's a completely other story for a different day.
I think the
But
reason
yeah,
they're doing it is because they don't want to draw attention to it, so they don't want to act like anything's wrong.
which is like just a huge problem. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that's just hockey. Hey, if we don't talk about it, it's not a problem, right?
Yeah, not a problem. Nothing wrong happened here.
Yeah. Anyways, on a way more positive note, let's finish this episode off with who is going to win the MVP, who is going to win the Hart Trophy this year in the NHL.
Who do you have? Because I'm a little undecided.
I've gone a bit off the board here. I have Alexander Barkov, Sasha Barkov, winning
Sasha
MVP.
Sasha
Yep.
Barkov, eh?
Just because he won the Selke last year, so everyone already knows he's an elite defensive player. I think that the points are going to be there as well. I think Barkov could be a point-per-game player, consistently be an elite defensive forward, and if Florida isn't at the top of the standings, there's no reason why he can't be nominated. And I think the other thing is MVP, I don't see how they give it to McDavid again, just because the problem with something like the Hart Trophy is they don't give it out to the same player over and over again, which is dumb because if you're the best player, if you're the MVP of the league, it doesn't matter if you were the MVP of the league last year. If you're the MVP of the league this year again, then you deserve to win the trophy. But I don't think they're going to give it to McDavid again. And because of that, I think that McKinnon is obviously way up there. He's definitely the first name that came to mind. But I think this might be the year that a guy like Sasha Barkov can come in under the radar and win this award.
Labi, if the Florida Panthers do what you say they're gonna do and they win the series, they win the division, I will agree with you and say Barkov deserves MVP. He has been with that Florida team his entire career. He's been there through the ups, the downs, the goods, the bads. He deserves the credit. Obviously, at the end of the day, none of these guys don't want to win that trophy because ultimately that's not what matters. It's the Stanley Cup. But I can agree with you if Barkov and the Florida Panthers are able to do whatever they can and win that division, then I can see them nominating and I can see Barkov winning it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just looking. I'm trying to think of players who might win, right? McDavid won last year, so I think that works against him automatically. Draisaitl won 2 years ago, and they both play on the same team. Once again, I disagree that these factors matter, but unfortunately, these factors matter, so we have to talk about them. The fact that Draisaitl and McDavid play on the same team and are the most two recent winners is going to work against them. Kucherov won 3 years ago. He has the whole long-term IR thing. He also plays on a stacked team in Tampa, which also shouldn't work against you, but it will. So I don't see a Tampa Bay player winning. For the same reason, I think that might work against Colorado because they're also such a stacked team. I think the difference is McKinnon hasn't won yet. And so for that reason, McKinnon is like that one big name that I still think about. When I look at some of the other teams that I think are going to do really well this year and who might force their name into the race, the thing like I don't see an Islander winning MVP because they're just a good team. And then outside of that, I don't know, like honestly, I think Austin Matthews could find himself nominated for this trophy. I'd go and say Crosby, but he's injured to start the year. I don't know how much of the season he's going to miss, but like you have to play at least 75 games to be a Hart Trophy contender. And so for that, I'm not going to sit here and say Crosby. Although what I will say is the fact that Crosby's only won this trophy twice is just a fucking disgrace. I don't understand. Like, he's been the best player in the world since 2006. Like, McDavid's, not to get into that fight, but Sidney Crosby and Alexander Ovechkin were the two best players, and it wasn't even close for at least 12 years until McDavid came around. And the fact that the two of them didn't win this award every year for those 12 years is like just ridiculous, but that's besides the point. Like, in soccer, who wins the Ballon d'Or every year? Messi and Ronaldo. Why? Because those two are clear of everybody else. And at least FIFA recognizes that and gives it to them every year. They should have been doing that with Crosby and Ovechkin. But I don't think Crosby and Ovechkin are going to win this trophy because Crosby's injured to start the year. And Ovechkin, I don't think Washington's going to have a good enough year. And I don't think he's going to do anything crazy like score 60 goals. So I think it's wide open. I think that the three nominees are going to be Austin Matthews, Nathan McKinnon, and Alexander Barkov. And I think Alexander Barkov wins it because bold predictions.
I mean, I don't disagree with you at any of these because I think they're all extremely good, great players, and you know, I can't argue. I literally can't argue with you because it's true. Like all these players have an excellent chance of winning the MVP of the season.
Yeah, and then, of course, I'd say Ted Lindsay Award, but the Ted Lindsay Award is just the MVP voted on by the players, and that means that almost every year it does go, like, the Ted Lindsay is actually a better award, in my opinion, because going back to my point, if I start at 2006, 2007, which was Crosby's and Malkin's second year in the league, this trophy has gone to Crosby, Ovi, Daniel Sedin, Malkin, Crosby, Price, Patrick Kane, McDavid, Kucherov, Draisaitl, McDavid. So it's been a lot more fair because the players do a better job of none of this, oh, but he plays for a stacked team, oh, but he won last year bullshit. It's who's the best player in the league right now, and so they vote for who the best player in the league is. For that reason, I think McDavid will win the Ted Lindsay Award again this year just because who's the best player in the league? McDavid's the best player in the league.
Yeah, I don't think there's an argument there, Lab. I think that saying that McDavid is gonna win the MVP is like saying it's gonna be a blue sky. There's a blue sky. Like it is because McDavid is the best player in the league, and there's no question about it.
Yeah, and I mean the players recognize that, and that's why whenever they do those player votes, I honestly take more stock into that than I do into any of these other things because what routinely happens, they respect the older players and then they recognize the true talent. Like every year, and I guarantee you the player poll is going to come out again this year. Connor McDavid's going to be named the best player in the league because he's the best player in the league, but then they're going to also ask these other questions about like, I don't know exactly how they phrase it, but they're more or less like, oh, but who's like the greatest players, like this type of stuff. And that's where they show the respect to Crosby and Ovechkin and be like, the fact that Crosby and Ovechkin are both still like top 10 players in the NHL right now show how elite they are, and they are like the two greatest players still currently playing. You know what I mean? Like McDavid's a better player right now, but certainly has a long way to go to reach the legacy of Ovechkin and reach the legacy of Crosby.
Exactly, and I couldn't agree with you more on that one.
Yeah, and so with that, any closing words to wrap up this season preview show?
It's about seasons in full swing, man. Like fans are back in the stands. Except if you're Buffalo, then you're in the Bill Stadium. But it should be a very, very fun year, especially with a lot of different faces and a lot of new places. So I'd like to see how the season plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm excited that it's back to a normal schedule. It'll be nice to play some West Coast teams again for the first time in a long time. It'll be nice to see Leafs Penguins again for the first time in a while.
Yeah,
actually, they haven't played since we last went to that game, Leafs Penguins, which would have been back in February of 2020, about a month before the whole world.
And you remember what happened in that game, Labi?
Yeah, what I remember is that we were there, and then the game happened, and then, I remember the Leafs lost to Buffalo about a week before that. That's what I do remember.
You might be missing the fact that you got shut out by Toronto, but we'll skip by that. Oh, 4 goals was it? Yeah, I think four
Yeah,
goals.
it was a 4-0 Toronto win. But yeah, no, I think it'll be fun to be able to play all these teams. It'll be interesting to see how Seattle does in their first year.
Yeah,
And like you mentioned, a lot of names in some new places. The league definitely got shook up, and I think it's a very wide open league as well. I think I don't think you can point to kind of one team being the team to beat. I think that there are obviously a few teams that have a better chance than others, but as we saw last year, if you had told people before the season started last year that the Montreal Canadiens would be in the Stanley Cup Finals, I don't think anyone outside of Quebec would have listened to you. And so that's the thing about hockey is it's unpredictable and anything can happen.
that's why hockey is the greatest sport in the world.
Absolutely. And we did want to commit to a full preview, which is why, this is going to be a longer episode. And it's also why we're focusing just on hockey. Next week, we'll be back breaking down some other stuff. We know the MLB playoffs are going on right now. We'll be able to talk about some stuff going on around the world in soccer, the international break that just wrapped up. I know we've been following, especially the qualifying process for Canada, the USA in the World Cup. That will all be in next week's episode. Also, NFL talk about what's going on there. But for now, thank you very much for listening to another episode of the Benchwarmers Sports Talk podcast. As always, we appreciate all the support, and we hope you enjoy the NHL season this year. And with that, we'll see you next week.